Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Martirano, the proud superintendent of the Howard County Public School System. It is a beautiful day here in Howard County, and I hope wherever you are, it is just as sunny. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's School Safety Advisory Board meeting. It is 10 o'clock, and therefore I will call this meeting to order. I would like the MCSS staff to please confirm one more time that the meeting is live streamed as well as being recorded.
It is live streamed and being recorded.
Thank you very much. Since we have several new members, including myself, I'd like to begin with introductions. So as we go through these slides, I'd like to ask each board member to provide their name, appointment organization, when you were appointed to the board, and I would really like to hear about your school safety lens and school safety priorities you bring to the board. The work of which we will embark upon together is extremely important. So let's go ahead with the first part of the introductions, if we could. And I will start. So I am the newly appointed chair of this group, and I am so proud and honored to be so. I've been a superintendent for 18 years. Yes, I said 18 years as a superintendent, 9 in St. Mary's County, 3 as state superintendent in West Virginia, and 6 in Howard County. I've been appointed by the governor as the chair for this year, and I'm very honored to do so. The lens of which I look through this is extremely important. I start my day off with all things associated with school safety, and we must keep our children safe so that quality instruction can occur. And I look forward to working with all of you. Let me now throw this to Catherine. If you would introduce yourself, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm not Senator Klausmeier. Senator Klausmeier is the Senate appointee for the board. I'm her legislative director. I mainly have a focus on the legislative side of stuff. That's where as we'll get to later, that's where this whole board started with legislation. So that's what I'm here for.
Thank you very much. Let's move on. Is Eric Ebersol on?
I am on. Thank you, Dr. Martirano. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well, my friend.
I don't see enough of you these days. I worry about that.
I know.
I'm Eric Ebersol. I am a state delegate currently representing parts of Baltimore and Howard counties, soon to just represent Baltimore County, sorry to say. And I've been the designee of Speaker Jones and Speaker Bush previously to this advisory subcabinet for the last, I don't know, several years, at least goes far back enough when Speaker Bush was still with us. So thank you.
Great to see you, sir. Thank you. Let's move on to Karen Bailey. Karen.
Good morning. So let's see, I was appointed out of the gate after the Safe to Learn Act by MABE, which is the Maryland Association of the Boards of Education. I've been on our school board and serving as chair since December of 2014. So I have just graduated my daughter out of the system, and I still have a son in there. So obviously school safety is of utmost importance to our board and to our students as well.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. Let's move on now to Dr. Kelly Anderson.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Anderson. I am the coordinator of psychological services in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, which means I oversee all the school psychologists in the county. I've been involved with the advisory board, the creation of the model policy and the revisions with MCSS since the beginning, I think. And we also in AACPS provide the threat assessment training for the SRO training that MCSS oversees. Within our own county, I oversee the threat assessment process. So we create the policy and regulations. And right now we're actually in the process of rolling out a new system, the Navigate 360, which is a web-based online threat assessment system that we're starting to use here in AACPS. So I think my interest and expertise is in all things threat assessment as it relates to school safety.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it. Let's move on now to Pamela Gaddy. Pamela?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Pam Gaddy.
Pam.
I am at Patapsco High School and Center for the Arts in Dundalk, Maryland. I'm a 26-year veteran. I have 2 students currently in the high school system, as well as a former coach in the system as well. I was appointed at the beginning of this board, I believe 2018, and my perspective comes as a coach, a teacher, and a parent within the school system itself.
Thank you very much. And let's move on to Lourdes Padilla.
Good morning and congratulations. My name is Lourdes Padilla. I'm the Maryland Secretary for the Department of Human Services. Have 36 years in human services. Our department oversees the child welfare system in Maryland, along with all the other safety net programs such as Medicaid, SNAP, also known as food stamps benefits, cash assistance, energy assistance, and a number of others that I wouldn't name. But the most important one where we work very closely is the child welfare. As you know, there's a lot of reporting of suspected child abuse that takes place in the schools. And historically, the school districts have worked with our department to refer the children to appropriate services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's now move on to the next slide. Andrew Tress. Andrew, you with us? Not seeing Andrew on. Let's move. Does anybody see Andrew on? I don't see him. Let's move on to Laurel Moody.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Okay, good. I'm fighting a bad cold, so forgive me. My name's Laurel Moody, and I've been a member of this board since the beginning, back in 2018. I currently am a professor at Stevenson University in our nursing education program, but I'm on this board as the liaison for MIMS, Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services. I sit on PMAC as the liaison for the Maryland State Department of Education and the Maryland Department of Health, focused on school health services.
Thank you, Laurel. Did you say that you've been on since the beginning?
I think since the beginning. I think Pam and I came at the same time. Yes.
Thank you for your service, and I'll be looking forward to your institutional knowledge.
Thank you.
Let's move on to Claire Cabral. Claire.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Claire Cabral. I am the student appointed by the Maryland Association of Student Councils. I serve as a school safety liaison for them. And through that position, I also serve as the co-leader of the Maryland Center for School Safety Student Focus Group, which you'll hear about a little bit more later. I was appointed to this board last year, but I've served in the school safety position for the past 3 years, and I've been involved in the Maryland Association of Student Councils since my 7th grade year. I'm a junior currently. The biggest thing I'm focused on this year and have been focused on is the student perspective in relation to school safety, because I've found throughout my years working in school safety that sometimes what students are seeing is very different than what adults are seeing. So this year, I'm just really hoping to continue to promote that student perspective, get more perspectives from around the state within the student focus group, and work hard to share that with you all and ensure that the student voice is heard in decision-making related to school safety.
Claire, tell us the school system and school you attend.
I attend Hereford High School in Baltimore County.
We're really looking forward to hearing your perspective. We must always listen to our students, and I'm hopeful that you'll provide all that representation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, let's move on to Dr. Tia McKinnon. Dr. McKinnon, you on? Don't see her on. Can we move to the next slide? Let's move now to Sheriff Matthew Crisafulli. Did I say that correct?
The sheriff couldn't make it today. He just sent me a note. So he will not be on today.
Okay, thank you. Chief Paul Kiefer.
Yes, good morning. Chief Paul Kiefer of the Hagerstown City Police Department in Hagerstown up here in Western Maryland. Been on the board now for a few years. Was asked by other board members to represent the Western Maryland component of the state, and I've been glad to do so now. I think it's been at least 2 years, and it was during the pandemic when I started on. And I oversee, obviously, the law enforcement component here in Hagerstown. I work very closely with the Sheriff's Department for Washington County. So we both coincide our responsibilities. I have SROs in city schools. He has the county schools on that side. So we work very closely with school safety personnel for the Board of Education here on various procedures and protocols. And we also look at our SROs to build a variety of different programs that are non-enforcement type programs, mentoring programs that our SROs come up with within the individual school system or schools that work specifically for those schools. So it may not be a broad spectrum policy that we come up with, but for one high school it may work better than at another high school. So we give a little latitude to our SROs to work with school personnel to come up with any kind of programs to help the students and to increase the safety within those individual schools.
Chief, welcome. And I hail from Western Maryland, Allegheny County, born and raised. I know my cousin is your county administrator, and I look forward to your perspective from Western Maryland as we think about the diversity of our state and the differences contained regarding approaches towards safety and security. So thank you for your perspective. Let's move on now to Dave Engel.
Hello, I'm not Dave Engel. I'm his designee. My name is David Curry. I am a criminal intelligence analyst at the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center. I'm part of a team that writes and collates information that supports the annual hate bias report. And I will be talking about that a little bit later.
Okay, thank you very much. But it is Dave though, right? I got that correct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can't go wrong there. Let's move on to Detective Lawrence E. Smith. Lawrence, are you on? Seeing him as well. Is there another slide? Let's move on now to Dr. Sharon Hoover. Sharon?
Hi, good morning, Dr. Martirano. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Hoover. I'm a professor of child and adolescent psychiatry at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, and I co-direct the National Center for School Mental Health and direct the National Center for Safe Supportive Schools. I've been on this board since its inception, and I should also mention I'm a parent of three young people, one who recently graduated Howard County Schools and 2 high school students in Howard County. So it's a pleasure to serve on the board and good to see everybody.
Oh, that's a fantastic piece of information. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Let's move on to Megan Berger.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sick today, so I'm going to stay off camera. Apologies for that, but I've been on the board since its inception. I'm here representing Disability Rights Maryland, which is the state of Maryland's protection and advocacy agency for individuals with disabilities. So we're congressionally mandated to advance and defend the rights of individuals with disabilities. We do a lot of education work. And we're here on this board, with a disability and a disability advocacy lens. So happy to be here.
Glad you're with us. Thank you. Let's move on to Scott Tiffin. Scott, are you on?
Yep, I'm here. I'm Scott Tiffin. I've been on the board for, I guess, about a year, representing the Maryland Assembly of School-Based Health Centers. So just helping, advocate and support the health and behavioral health side of school safety.
Okay, Scott, really appreciate your perspective. Michael Brown, a newly appointed individual to the board. Michael, are you on?
Yes, I am. Appreciate it, sir. Michael C. Brown, principal of Wintersmore High School, Carroll County Public Schools. I'm also the president-elect of the Maryland Association for Secondary School Principals. Like Superintendent said, I am newly appointed and very humbled to really be on this board. Obviously, being a school principal, the school safety lens encompasses everything I do each and every day, keeping students safe. So I'm very interested in helping to strengthen our policies, procedures centered around school safety, and also bring a perspective and a voice for secondary school principals and all principals in the state of Maryland.
Michael, welcome to the group. You have a very large presence on social media, and I follow you, and I really appreciate how you approach that from a very positive perspective and the relationship that you have with your young people. It's very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let's move on to James T. Bell.
Good morning, everybody. I've been a member since 2018. I've been a coach for the last 11 years in the school system. Before that, I was a college coach for 10 years. Right now, a new position in school is in special ed department. That is actually just starting this year. I have a son who's in the elementary school in the system. He does have an IEP. And I'm a big advocate for after-school programs and connecting the community to the school campuses.
Thank you. Mr. Bell, I didn't hear the school system. Maybe you said it and I didn't hear. What school system?
Oh, St. Mary's.
Okay, very good. Good to hear from you. I was down there last weekend and we'll be down next weekend. Let's move on to Captain Patrick Herring. Captain Herring, you on? Not seeing him. Let's move on to Thomas Albin. Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Albin. I work for the Archdiocese of Baltimore. My role here is to represent and provide perspective through the lens of non-public schools. And really my objective and work is to seek both parity and partnership between non-public and public schools for the betterment of both relative to overall school safety.
Thank you for your perspective. I just met with one of the local pastors of one of the Catholic churches, and the perspective needs to continue to be lifted up for the safety of all children in the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to Manfred Reek.
Yeah, hi, I'm Manfred Reek. I joined the advisory board, I believe, at its inception, as well as the school bus driver perspective is the focus that I have. And over the last several years, 7 years as a school bus driver, the last 3 years, I got promoted as a supervisor in the Baltimore County school system in transportation, but I do still drive. And I drive out of the Hereford zone, so I hope to maybe get a chance to meet with Claire. However, the unfortunate thing is this is going to be my last meeting. I'm retiring in the beginning of December.
Oh.
So I won't be participating in this role. So this will be my last meeting.
That's unfortunate. So congratulations to you for one.
Thank you.
But at the same time, whoever we find then to represent your appointment, I'm extremely interested in hearing from you as well as then others regarding school buses, school bus drivers, as we are dealing with the shortage and the continuity of training for our bus drivers who are coming on to ensure the full safety of our young people. Because I don't need to tell you or anybody on here, bus driver shortage is real, and that's a major concern for us.
And
thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to Lee Nadine Oppenheim.
Hi, I'm Lee Oppenheim. I am the Director of Finance and Operations for Ivy Mount School. I sit on the board representing the non-public special education schools through the MCSS legislation or appointed by the governor. Our focus, like Tom's, is also to work with everybody on school safety for the individuals with disabilities and the special needs students, and making sure that we're all at the same table together.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm interested in your perspective as well. Let's move on to the next slide, or that may be the last one. Okay. Let me now move on with the agenda. I'm now going to ask Ms. Ludicky, good to see you as well. Could you please confirm that we have a quorum?
We do. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much, and it's great to see you as well. The last meeting of the advisory board was in May. The May meeting was recorded, and that recording is available at the MCSS website. As such, there are no meeting minutes to be approved today. You should have in your packet several materials today, one of which obviously is our agenda. And I want to first of all lift up our outstanding executive director, Kate Bryan, who's been extremely supportive of my new role in this position. And as we move on today with our agenda, I'm asking for a motion. First of all, do we have any additions to today's agenda? No agenda additions? Seeing none, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Tom, so moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Tom. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Who seconded that, please?
Michael Brown.
Michael, thank you. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? I don't see any opposition or any abstentions. Motion passes unanimously. We're now going to move on to our agenda, and following that today, I'm going to turn this over to our Executive Director, Kate Bryan, and providing some background regarding the governing entities. Ms. Bryan, are you there?
I am. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Martirano. Just to clarify any confusion, I am still Kate, changed from Kate Hession to Kate Bryan. So just to alleviate any confusion there, it is still me. So I'm going to go briefly over some background on MCSS, the legislation, the Safe to Learn Act, which in your slide packets, the link was there for you. But we'll just give some general overview and background information about the Safe to Learn Act, the Advisory Board, and MCSS, in particular for our new members. So MCSS, the Maryland Center for School Safety, was established in 2013. Originally, when it was established, there was one individual within MCSS. Their role was to provide coordination, collaboration, training, resources, and really be that conduit between the schools, the law enforcement agencies, and ensuring the safety of our schools and our students. Following the tragic events in Parkland, Florida in 2018, as well as our own tragedy here in Maryland at Great Mills High School in 2018, the governor and the General Assembly worked together on bipartisan legislation and enacted a comprehensive school safety piece of legislation called the Safe to Learn Act of 2018. The purpose of the legislation was to ensure that Maryland continues to be that leader in school safety initiatives. So one of the things that the Safe to Learn Act did is it established a governing body. So that governing body is the School Safety Subcabinet. It is staffed with 6 department and agency heads. So it has, the chair is the Superintendent of Education. It also has the Superintendent of State Police, the Secretary of Health, the Secretary of Disabilities, the Executive Director of the Interagency Commission on Public School Construction, as well as the Attorney General's Office. The Subcabinet also awards grant funds, which is one of the things that the Safe to Learn Act did, is it made MCSS and the Subcabinet a granting agency. They provide general oversight, and most importantly, they are a regulatory authority. So one of the things the statute did is establish the Subcabinet as a regulatory authority. And so they do have several pieces of regulation that are live now. Additionally, it established the School Safety Subcabinet Advisory Board, say that quickly 5 times, or more affectionately known as just the Advisory Board. There are 24 members, as you heard early this morning, from various groups and bringing various expertise, background, and lens to school safety. It includes a student representative, and we're very excited that Claire is on the board with us, or with you. And they provide, the advisory board's responsibilities are to provide advice and recommendations to the subcabinet. In addition to identifying the subcabinet as well as the advisory board members, the Safe to Learn Act also required school systems to appoint school safety coordinators. So this is an individual in the school system who serves as that liaison between the school system, the Center for School Safety, and law enforcement agencies. Additionally, although originally they were referred to, or they were called mental health services coordinators, the blueprint changed their name and it is now behavioral health services coordinators, but they serve the same role. So they are also a position appointed at the local school system level, coordinating existing services to ensure that wraparound services are being delivered to students who may need them. Originally, when the Center for School Safety was established, again, it was a coordinating, collaborating body. The Safe to Learn Act actually increased the responsibilities of MCSS. So in addition to establishing the School Safety Subcabinet and Advisory Board, MCSS is mandated to develop guidance and training documentation. I think Dr. Anderson mentioned earlier, one of the trainings that we are mandated to provide is training for all school resource officers and security employees in the state. And we do that not just our agency alone, but we do that in coordination and collaboration with many subject matter experts across the state. So we really do appreciate that support that we've been provided the last 4 years. We are building partnerships and relationships both at the local, state, and national level. We have a website that is filled with all sorts of resources that are available to support public and private schools in the state. We conduct regular safety trainings and emergency plan. We review all emergency plans for public schools in the state. Again, we administer grants. And we also, although not by statute, we do administer Safe Schools Maryland. For those of you that don't know, Safe Schools Maryland is our statewide anonymous reporting system for school safety incidents, concerns across the state. And it's available to all schools. Every public school in the state is a member. We have over 250, almost 300 now, private schools and non-public schools that participate in Safe Schools Maryland. So it's really a fantastic resource. Dr. Anderson mentioned earlier, one of the first tasks of the School Safety Subcabinet was the model policy, the Behavioral Threat Assessment Team model policy that was developed in 2018. That is available on our website. We've been going through some discussions about revisions, updates, modifications, additional guidance documents and materials. So again, really appreciate the support of all of the partners that we have been working with to make some additional updates and provide better clarification for the model policy. The Department of Health led the development of a mental health gap analysis report. So again, that is also available on our website if anyone is interested. Excuse me. It was tasked, or the report was required to include an assessment of mental health services as well as practitioners, needs of school-age children throughout the state. So that report was completed in the fall of 2018. The School Safety Subcabinet provides grants, provides or administers Safe Schools Fund grant to public schools in the state. So this is a grant that can be used for delivering behavioral health and wraparound services. It can be used to conduct training for personnel or conducting any sort of outreach. In addition to that, MCSS, in addition to the subcabinet grant, the MCSS also administers 4 other grants. So we administer a hate crimes grant, which is available to public and non-public schools throughout the state, as well as child care centers who are at risk of hate crime. We administer the school resource officer grant, which is available to either public schools and or law enforcement agencies to support their SRO programs. We administer the School Safety Grant Program, which was originally under the Interagency Commission on Public School Construction. It moved to us through a budget amendment 2 years ago, and in fiscal year 23, we're administering that grant again. And that grant is specific to public schools. But for private and non-public partners, we also administer the IAC's non-public school safety grant. So by way of background, some of the things that the advisory board has really been critical in supporting over the last 4 years is the input on our SRO and SSE training. So the training of our school resource officers and security employees. There were individuals on the board who supported the development of the behavioral threat assessment model policy. The board has provided input on Safe Schools Maryland's anonymous reporting system, not just how it functions, but also marketing initiatives, training and marketing initiatives. The advisory board has provided input and comments and recommendations relative to the to the subcabinet's regulations. The advisory board is where the idea and the launch of the student focus group happens. So very excited about that. And then last year, the advisory board worked on the development of the 2022 school safety recommendations that went before the subcabinet this past August. The two big changes, as Lee mentioned earlier when she gave her brief, in 2020, the legislation was updated and there is now a representative from the non-public special education facility. So that is fantastic. So Lee joined us in 2020. And I mentioned earlier, the name change, originally it was mental health services coordinators. That was updated through the blueprint to behavioral health service coordinators. Take any questions on the legislation, on MCSS, on the advisory board?
Don't see any questions, but thank you for this comprehensive overview. And I just encourage all members of the board to be up to speed with all the various components that we will address throughout the year. Thank you, Ms. Bryan, for that. I appreciate it. Let's move on, if we could, now to the legislative update. And Dawn Ludicky, please lead us in a discussion about that.
Hi, good morning, everybody. And I'm assuming, Kate, that you're able to still steer the slides because okay, super, because I cannot. All right. So we have 3 pieces of legislation from the 2022 session that they wanted me to review with everyone. There were obviously plenty more that cover or touch upon things related to students or teachers or school safety. And the various tangentially related topics, but these 3 are 3 that are critically important for a host of reasons, and we wanted to make sure everybody was well aware of them. So next slide, the first one we're going to talk about is the Child Interrogation Protection Act. This act was effective October 1st, so it started shortly after the school year began. But throughout the summer and once the legislation passed, any trainings that we were doing related to school security employees or SROs, this was something that was covered with all of them in that training class. So this law is directed at custodial interrogations of juveniles. To be clear, and you'll see on the slide, I wrote Miranda warnings. Well, Miranda warnings have long been required for juveniles, so this is not new that you must give a Miranda warning to a juvenile. Of course, the Miranda versus Arizona decision came out in 1966 and then was made applicable to juveniles in the case of In re Galt in 1967. But this law specifies that the Miranda warning should be given in an age-appropriate version. So you can't just rattle off the litany of things that everybody is accustomed to saying or hearing on a TV crime show. You have to make sure it's something that can actually be understood by the juvenile who is receiving that. Custodial interrogation is given the same meaning it always has been given, and we do actually have a reference to that within our public safety article. It very specifically states that this law applies to school resource officers. So they made that very, very clear. You cannot, under this new law, conduct a custodial interrogation of a child until the child has had the opportunity to consult with an attorney. They can do it in person, over the phone, via video conference, etc. And the officer has to have tried to give actual notice to the parent or guardian of the child that they are going to undergo a custodial interrogation that they're in custody. The Miranda warnings and the right to counsel cannot be waived. Nothing can be waived by the juvenile. And it applies whether the child is being charged as an adult or a juvenile. So it applies no matter what. You can't get around that. It also includes a requirement that law enforcement maintain records related to how they tried to give that actual notice to the parent or guardian. So was it in writing? Did you call? Did you send an email? Did you send a text message? What did you do? They have to also record the name of the attorney and the county where the consultation took place. So for example, if a child is arrested or undergoing a custodial interrogation in Prince George's County, but the lawyer on duty who's available is in Montgomery County, that must be documented in the records. Exigency rules still apply. So if there's an emergency where the questioning needs to be done in order to protect the life or safety of the public or someone else at that moment, that questioning can proceed, but the questioning without the right to counsel, but that questioning must be very narrowly tailored to that specific issue, meaning dealing with the exigent circumstance and the risk to public safety at that present moment. They must record the interrogation unless it's impossible, impractical, or unsafe. And they have to inform the child that it's being recorded. They can use body cameras to do that. So it can just be recorded on the officer's body camera. In the event that something is not followed within the way this is written and somebody misses one of the steps along the way, there is a rebuttable presumption that the child's statement is inadmissible. So the state can overcome that by showing by clear and convincing evidence that the child made their statement knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily. But it's that higher standard of clear and convincing rather than preponderance of the evidence. However, it does not make the child's statement admissible against another individual. So that's the Child Interrogation Protection Act. And if anybody has questions about that one, I'll answer questions on that one first before we move on to the two other pieces.
Just a quick comment before others may have some questions. You did, Ms. Lutke, emphasize that this is now part of the SRO training. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then do you feel that we need to do anything else to communicate this to local law enforcement? Do you believe that, does the center believe that we've communicated this effectively?
I mean, it's hard to know, I'm not going to, because it is something that we have been very forward on from the time this legislation passed. And the agency has certainly been very vocal and forward on it from the time it was filed, right? And as it made its way through the General Assembly. So throughout each legislative session, MCSS hosts monthly calls with different school safety stakeholders and routinely updating those stakeholders on pending legislation that impacts their work is a regular part of that, the center's work.
Thank you. Many of us have very robust and revised MOUs with our law enforcement regarding SROs, and I would believe that this would be something we'd probably want to include at the local level with that. So thank you for this overview. Any other questions about this one? Does anybody else have questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to the next one.
The next one is the cybersecurity law that passed that establishes a unified strategy for cybersecurity statewide, and that unified cybersecurity strategy statewide also applies to our local and municipal governments. So that also includes our school systems. So within that, it requires that the state adopt a master IT plan and cybersecurity plan, and it creates centralized management. At one point in time, the Office of the Attorney General was working with that cybersecurity strategy, but it has been replaced by a council that now will oversee that has sort of statutorily authorized membership, right? And so they're going to oversee the overall strategy. There's budgetary language in there that requires that the state put dollars on the table to make sure that this is implemented. It includes, for example, and this is important for our local folks, that it has provisions related to procurement and includes standards on non-visual access. So that you got to make sure that what you're doing is accessible. And it requires that there be audits externally every 2 years for units of state government and an annual report for each state government's status on compliance with these new laws. Next slide. It creates an Office of Security Management within the Department of Information Technology that's led by our state's Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO, as they commonly say, because we love acronyms here in the government. And it involves coordination with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, right? Because centralizing the overall state cybersecurity and IT plan and doing so in conjunction with our emergency managers is critically important in terms of managing overall response to any cybersecurity threat or attack. This office will set standards and security requirement guidelines, make recommendations about vulnerabilities or deficiencies. And this office is specifically tasked with working with local school systems and boards of education. And it allows for them to do training and exercises in conjunction with the Department of Emergency Management, the Maryland National Guard, and local emergency managers, which again can involve your local school systems and doing tabletop exercises with them. This will include, specifically for boards of ed and our local school systems, need to develop cybersecurity preparedness and response plans. So if you don't have one, there's going to need to be one. And if you have one already, but it doesn't match the new unified state standards, it'll need to be updated in order to match the base level that the state is establishing. This Office of Security Management will have to send a report every year to the governor that also goes to the Budget and Taxation and Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs committees in the state Senate, and the Appropriations and Health and Government Operations committees in the House, along with the Joint Committee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Biotechnology, about what they're doing, where they're going, what's going on, what the performance indicators are, and what types of funding are needed. And then with respect to the Cybersecurity Council, this includes all of the cabinet secretaries, the chief information security officer, who will serve as the chair, the adjutant general, the superintendent of state police, governor's office of Homeland Security, the executive director of Department of Legislative Services, someone from the administrative office of the courts, the chancellor of the university system, and others who may serve at the direction of the CISO. They can also have non-voting members who are members of the Senate, House, and a representative of the judiciary. So again, it includes all branches of the government, not just the executive branches of the government. Does anyone have any questions about the cybersecurity law?
Just again, another comment, Ms. Ludig, if I may. This is germane to all of us at the local level as far as school systems and recognizing the diversity of our 24 LEAs and our non-publics and our private schools. Everyone has different capabilities to address this. Ms. Bryan, I think I would be interested in having further conversation about those lists of vulnerabilities that we could really communicate to local superintendents and to our non-public and privates, because this is one topic that acknowledging the great diversity in our abilities to respond to this, it is starting to dominate our discussions at the local level and having impact regarding disruption. And then when we're talking about ransomware, malware, all those things and implications, it is something that is top of mind for many of us. So we just sort of put a note next to that, who would be best to provide us further guidance regarding that list of vulnerabilities for local school systems and privates and non-publics. Thank you.
Yes, we'll definitely do that.
Yep. And there is one more slide. I wrapped it up, but I guess I'd already said the things that are on the next slide, but that's critically important to do that, because the data systems and the connectivity between all of our local systems and our state agencies and departments and even our federal departments is so interconnected that weaknesses or vulnerabilities along any of that can really cripple overall operations. So now we'll move to the last piece of legislation. This is the reportable offenses statute updates for this year, which actually updated two different provisions. It updated or created updates to the reportable offenses statute at 7303 of the education article. And it also created or updated, added provisions to section 26101 of the education article, which relates to disruptions of school operations. So the highlights for this particular law, it didn't really change what the qualifying offenses were that met the criteria or threshold for being those which must be reported. But what it did really do is standardize and make it abundantly clear, because not every school system viewed them the same way, that these are offenses that are not committed on school grounds and they are not committed at school-sponsored events. So this is wholly outside anything having to do with the school or school operations or school events. It relates to community-based offenses. Created a new data reporting requirement that occurs annually starting on December 30th, which is the first report is due this year. It includes additional procedures around the removal or exclusion of a student from the classroom environment based on a community-based offense. So, and one of the reasons why this was came to be was because there was a perception that schools were hearing about community-based offenses under the reportable offenses statute and not doing an analysis of whether the student posed an actual threat to the safety of the school community and were reflexively engaging in exclusionary discipline like suspension or expulsion that was not related to actual concerns in the school environment itself. So this really spells out how that is to be done. It requires that the school systems invite the student's counsel or attorney to any conference that is going to be had with the parents or guardians regarding a change in the student's placement. It reemphasizes the need to comply with the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. And it creates a new data collection related to disruption of school operations. And that is within 26101, which sets out the different types of, or the statutes related to disrupting school operations. The first report is due to MSDE on December 1st, and then the MSDE will have to provide a report to both the Center for School Safety and the General Assembly by February 1st of 2023. There's also a retroactive study that is to be done related to what the reportable offenses were prior to this change in the definition that clarified that they were only for things that were not occurring on school grounds or not at school-sponsored events. And that report was already due to MSDE, and that relates back to students who were arrested for reportable offenses between 2017 and 2022. So the end of last school year, going back to the start of the 2017-2018 academic year. Those are the highlights. Does anybody have any questions for me about this one?
Seeing none. Ms. Luedeke, thank you for these extremely important pieces of legislation overviews. They all have direct relevance to our daily work in schools. So thank you for that and your ongoing support of this board as well. So
Dawn, it's Laura Moody. Sorry, I just had a quick question. Are these only offenses within Maryland, or is it outside of the jurisdiction of Maryland?
They would be for things that could have occurred outside of Maryland if they met the definition of those crimes that are listed as reportable offenses.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
anyone else? Okay, thank you once again. Let's now move on with our fourth item on the agenda, which is the board updates. And our first report is the 2021 Hate Bias Report. Not quite sure who's presenting this, Ms. Bryan.
That would be
Dave.
me, sir. My name, Dave Curry. I'm Director Engel's designee. So I support and write and collect data for the hate bias report. Just to, if anyone wants a copy, you can download a copy from MCAC's website. Just to give you a little bit of some of the highlights, in 2021, there were 388 hate bias reports. The previous year, it was 382, and in 2019, it was 385. And I want to give you some context because currently our number of hate bias reports is about the same, and that tracks just going back the previous 4 years between 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Those incidents were 375, 385, 382, and 388. I know I'm rattling off numbers, but the point is they're kind of stable. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is in 2018 and 2019, schools accounted for about a third of the number of hate bias incidents that were reported in our hate bias report. In 2020, it dropped down to 12%. And in 2021, it dropped even lower to about 11.6%. And schools encompasses K through university level. So the data, if I interpret in the data, the number of hate bias incidents have continued, but the number that was attributed in the education setting has gone down significantly. If I had to interpret that data even more, I would assume that it had a significant amount had to do with how students were learning during the COVID period. Additional kind of highlights for with respect to hate bias itself, a lot of people, it might be helpful to know that if in general, when it comes to hate bias incidents, they're roughly about between 60 and 70% are race-based. And then from there, it's between 20 and 25% religion-based, or I'm sorry, excuse me, 15 to 20% religion-based, and between 10 and 15% sexual orientation. And from and then there's just fewer incidents from there, although there's different categories of hate bias. And so, but if race and ethnicity attribute to about 70% of that, disproportionately, the number of African Americans that are impacted by hate bias are clearly the victims that are attributed in our reporting. And then for the larger representation of religious hate bias incidents, that has a tendency to be Jewish. So I bring those into context because I know that the media and others in, politicians and things, they highlight certain communities that are increasing in terms of hate bias incidents, but by far the number of reporting shows that African-American communities and Jewish communities are the two disproportionately affected by hate bias based on our reporting. So those are some of the elements that I wanted to highlight, and if I'll end it there.
Okay. Any questions? Dave, this is a very robust report that has direct implications to understand the specific data at the local level in terms of schools. And the trend data is extremely important, but all of us need to make certain that we are set up to do everything that we can to eradicate hate from our schools and hold it accountable. So I thank you for lifting this up and appreciate your leadership on this as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on now to a report that I'm looking forward to as well, which is the MCSS Student Focus Group. Claire, I believe you're presenting that for us today.
Yep.
Great. Whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Claire Cabral. I am one of the co-chairs of the Student Focus Group for this year. For those of you who don't know what the MCSS Student Focus Group is, it is a group under MCSS that is composed of students who meet monthly and in committees in order to provide input on school safety issues that they are passionate about, and also provide feedback on initiatives that MCSS is looking for student input on. So just to kind of give you a summary of what's going on this year, we have 37 students ranging from 6th to 12th grade. So we're focused on secondary school representatives. We're really excited with our middle school representation because we found the earlier we get these students involved, the more likely they're going to stay involved up until and up through high school. So we're really excited to have a strong middle school representation this year. We have representatives from 14 of Maryland's counties, and 95% of Maryland's counties and Baltimore City have appointed liaisons. So we have a very diverse array of perspectives in terms of age, in terms of the areas people are coming from, and also in terms of the schools people are coming from as well. 2 members from the inaugural serve as co-facilitators. That's me and then my co-position, Henry Miser. We both are appointed to this position and have gained this position through the Maryland Association of Student Councils, where we both serve as school safety liaisons. So we work very closely with the students in the student focus group and also our adult lead as well. In terms of some of the changes that we've had, this group has been in existence for 3 years, and I've served on it since its inaugural year. We updated the term length from 1 year to 6 months. We felt that this would engage students on a shorter turnaround time, and we would be able to keep students longer and also keep students involved that wanted to be involved. So by having this shorter time span, students are getting involved, they're staying involved, and they're showing their commitment in attending meetings. We're tracking their attendance, we're tracking the projects they're submitting to us. So we found this is really helpful. Our next applications go out at the end or at the beginning of December. Current members will not need to reapply, granted that they have followed all of the attendance requirements and have been participatory members, and individuals halfway through their 6th grade year may apply when eligible. We have revised and incorporated this plan just to ensure the success and longevity of the group and to keep students involved who'd like to stay involved. So just kind of alluding to what I was talking about earlier, this is our student focus group structure updated for this year. We have Alice Rhodes. She's amazing. I really enjoy working with her. She's our adult lead and a communication specialist within MCSS. She helps plan all of our meetings. She oversees the group, sends out messages to everyone. And then we have me and my co-position, Henry Miser. We are the co-facilitators of the student focus group. All of the things for the group that get filtered through us, and then we send them to Miss Alice, who reviews them. That includes different content we're putting out, different projects. And then this is something new this year, which is really exciting. We have our committee chairs. Each are composed of 2 students who are running these committees. And then we have our general members. So it's a pretty cool leadership structure, and we have a lot of working parts. And it's been really successful this year. I'm very excited to see how far it's come. So in terms of what the committees are, we have 3 committees that are established. 6 members were appointed to lead these chairs. So we have a chair and a vice chair, and these members were notified last month of their appointments, and they've been working really hard to get all of their committees up and running. And 100% of members serve on committees which interest them. So this, what we do is at the beginning of these terms, we send out descriptions of each of the committees, and we ask students to pick the one that they feel they would best have the expertise in or are the most interested in, and we split them up pretty evenly. So this year, everybody was afforded their first choice of committee, and all of our members are required to serve on a committee, and we've had a lot of engagement there. So our first committee we have is our legislative committee. I'd like to emphasize that this committee does not take stances on legislation. Rather, it educates our student focus group members about legislation that is impacting students, that's moving through the Maryland General Assembly. So their job is to educate the student focus group on legislative matters in the upcoming session. They research legislation regarding school safety and students. Currently, they are researching all of the past legislation that has gone through. In the past year, I sent them over a packet from this advisory board last year where we had summaries of the legislation, so they're familiar with the formatting and they understand what they should be looking for in the upcoming session. And they're additionally attending training on legislation. My co-position, Henry Miser, is putting together a presentation, has been leading them through the processes they should be looking at, how they should be approaching legislation. And we're really excited to see where this committee goes this year, and how informed they are of the processes that are impacting us through legislation. Our next committee we have is our Engagement and Outreach Committee. This committee really focuses on our community partnerships and also our school safety chapters program. They are currently working on establishing contacts between the student focus group and local county schools. They've drafted an email. They're really working to get that sent out. I know we've been editing it and looking through it. And they've been meeting pretty often. And they're also restructuring and connecting with school safety chapters to gain feedback on currently trending school safety topics. We felt that the program needed a restructure. Essentially what the school safety chapter program is every high school in the state is eligible to create one that's affiliated with MCSS. I started one at my high school and it's been very successful. But we want to make sure that this really reflects what MCSS likes and we're able to get as many students involved as possible. So they created a PowerPoint to educate students and stakeholders around the state who may be interested in starting their own school safety chapters at their high schools. They created a PowerPoint about the process they should go through, some of the new updates that we have for this year. And we are also in the process of editing that right now. So they've been meeting pretty regularly. They've been meeting twice a month. And I'm really excited to see what comes out of this group further than what's already been established. And our last committee, which is our most productive committee, is our content creation. They contribute to MCSS social media pages. They submit our Student Focus Group Friday posts. So if you look at MCSS, you'll see every week we have a new post that these students in this committee are making on school safety issues they feel passionate about. They are also authoring monthly blog posts for the MCSS website that get reviewed and revised and edited and sent through there. So I'm very excited to see more of what they come up with. And they're also creating and brainstorming ideas for videos, flyers, graphics. They're putting out all content that reflects the student focus group and our messages and what we feel is important for students to see. Last night, they just had a meeting with Erin about copyright and things they could use on their social media posts, how to make their posts accessible for the general public, how to catch people's attention. We had a lot of participation there. So I'm extremely excited to see the work that this student focus group does. Our two leads that we have here are doing a fantastic job coordinating and getting content back to me and Miss Alice. So again, I'm really excited to see where this committee goes. And then lastly, just in terms of the entire student focus group, as I mentioned previously, we do meet monthly. We discuss a different issue every month. This upcoming month, we're talking with a DARE representative and also about substance abuse. Last month, we spoke with a mental health coordinator from Baltimore County about suicide prevention and how to recognize the signs of someone who may be in a spot where they are at risk. So we've had a lot of engagement from our students. We're constantly getting feedback from them about what topics they want to see implemented at these meetings. And we're really excited to see where we continue to go up through the end of the 6-month term. I anticipate a lot of students from this term staying with us based on the engagement we've had thus far. And we've had a lot of great things happen this year. I have been really excited to see students grow and change and get a passion for certain topics. So we've come a long way from our start back in 2020. Thank you.
Outstanding presentation. Are there any questions for Claire? Okay. Claire, I have a quick comment. I don't know who's driving these slides. Can you go back to the slide that says the 2022 Initiatives, Engagement and Outreach Committee? Yeah, those two bullets there, establishing contact between the student focus group and local county schools and restructuring and connecting with school safety chapters to gain feedback on currently trending school safety topics and enhancing student participation in school safety. Please continue to keep us informed regarding those trends, right? I want to hear from the student trends. We seek that at our local level between all of our schools and how we can be proactive. So I'm very interested in hearing more reports on this particular topic from the student voice, but I commend you for your leadership and really thank you for this presentation. Great job.
Thank you. I will keep you informed.
Thank you so much. Now let's move on to continue to move on in our agenda. We have another report, especially safe, by board member Lee Oppenheim.
He was going to share slides. Lee, are you able to get the slides up?
Just to let you know, Lee, you are muted if you're trying to talk.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to get my slides up.
There you go.
Oh, I want this one. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Not yet. There we go.
How about now?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Hold on one quick second. There we go. Okay. We're very excited about this. This has been a project in many years in the coming. Just to give you a quick background, as I explained earlier, Ivy Mount is a non-public special education school in Rockville. For more than 60 years, we've been creating nationally recognized programs and partnerships for people with autism and other developmental disabilities, as well as their families. The morning of February 6, 2015 was an eye-opening day for our community. As I walked into the building, I was met by a police officer who told me that a bomb threat had been called into 911 and the bomb was scheduled to detonate any minute. Of course, the timing was during arrival. Although we were able to scramble to evacuate all the staff that were in the building and divert the arriving buses, cabs, and carpools, it was incredibly harrowing, extraordinarily challenging, and definitely much less than ideal for our student population. The arriving buses, cabs, and carpools were diverted to the shopping center down the block, but the situation meant that our students remained on their school buses for an additional 2 hours. Hold on a second, sorry. So we all know that emergency plans take a team effort. What we learned that day was that only a few of our staff knew our plans, that emergency plans for our population needed to be adapted, and that Ivy Mount needed to help conceptualize how to improve our plans. Ivy Mount did receive help through our collaborations with Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery County Police, and MCSS. In 2018, a few members from the non-public special education schools were asked to join an MSDE task force to revise the recommended emergency preparedness guidelines for public schools. As a result of that task force, we realized that guidance for preparing individuals with disabilities for emergencies did not exist. That is when we formed the Maryland Task Force. The task force was created in collaboration, like I said, with MSDE and MCSS. And we had school administrators, clinicians from non-public special education schools, teachers from both public and non-public schools, school safety officers from public schools, a parent with a student with special needs, and leading subject matter expert Michelle Gay from Safe and Sound Schools. In 2021, Safe and Sound Schools, in collaboration with the Maryland Task Force, partnered with the Jeffco DeAngelis Foundation to publish Especially Safe, an inclusive approach to safety preparation in educational settings. Safe and Sound Schools, for those who don't know, provides research-based education, tools, and resources to support crisis and prevention responses and recovery to protect every student and every school every day. Ivy Mount's experiences was nothing like what the Gay family went through on almost 10 years ago now in December of 2012 at the Sandy Hook Elementary School. Especially Safe was dedicated to Josephine Gay, who perished that day, who inspires all of us to ensure that everyone is safe and sound. Emergency planning is a challenge to meet the needs of neurotypical students, let alone looking at specific needs, planning, and meeting the needs of so many special students with disabilities. There are a lot of complexities for our students that need to be taken into account. According to the US Department of Statistics, there are 7.5 million students with disabilities. 95% of those students are in general education settings. We also need to consider staff and visitors who also may have disabilities. And lastly, we needed to consider those unidentified disabilities that may come up during a crisis or even temporary response disabilities like mobility issues. We all need to be prepared for all different types of disabilities in a variety of settings. We need to be prepared not just because it's the right thing to do, but as these regulations state, it is the law. So what we saw and learned is that there is a lot to safety preparedness. It's not enough for grown-ups to be prepared in a general way. We need our students and our school communities to be taught, trained, and prepared in both a general as well as individually specific ways. As with young learners and our special students, like Michelle's Josephine, we know that a lot of thought and care needs to be put into how we prepare and train in making our students and communities feel empowered and safe, not scared. What came from this was these two guides, a planning and preparation guide and a teaching and training guide. The planning and preparation guide goes over key considerations, a 6-step planning process, our team's framework, and individual safety plans. For each of these categories, we use them to identify the different considerations. So T is for transportation and mobility. E is for emotional, mental, behavioral health challenges. A is auxiliary communication considerations. M is medical health. And S is security and supervision. We use this Teams network to complete inclusive safety planning survey for each of our students and forming each of the individual teams. And from this, we can create the inclusive safety, the individual safety plan. What we find is that if we can work on these plans when there are already meetings going on, i.e. IEP meetings, then we can get all the information we need while at the same time not imposing more time and effort on people. The teaching and training guide also has key considerations. It has developmentally appropriate curriculum, a customizable teaching framework, and a teacher's toolbox. Especially Safe is taking an all hazards approach, as well as teaching safety skills for life. We all know the importance of practicing and that practicing makes progress, but we also need to remember that we want to practice in a low and no stress environment. The teaching frameworks are used to create an environment where students know this is all about being safe. We don't need the drama or the trauma. We can provide opportunities to practice, especially in fun, memorial ways that are developmentally appropriate. And we do our drills, we know, to not expect perfection, but rather importance. So these frameworks, there is no drama in their titles, there is no drama in the recommended use of them. So again, Safe and Sound Schools has brought Especially Safe to us. It is free of charge. You can go to the Safe and Sound Schools website. There's also videos of training for Especially Safe, and you can download the guides for your use as well. Any questions?
Any questions, comments? Excellent report and overview, Lee. I appreciate it. Someone trying to get in, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Very good, nice job. You have that information in your packet as well. Ms. Bryan, we're now going to move on to you with the advisory board recommendations. If I could ask you to lead that discussion.
Sure, thank you very much. So in 2022, there was a link in your, excuse me, or in your agenda to the completed recommendations by the advisory board that were completed in May. Those recommendations went before the subcabinet in August of 22. And the subcabinet would like the advisory board to dig a little deeper into some of these recommendations. And to begin, we're going to start with these three. So I'll briefly go through the three recommendations. And then the goal will be for the advisory board members to break into, not today, but break into three separate groups to discuss and see if we can come up with a consensus on, priorities, outcomes, and ways to address these recommendations. So the first is recommendation 3.1. So this recommendation was to develop and expand informational materials and training that would educate stakeholders, including students, staff, and parents, and community members on identifying behaviors of concern. And these resources will incorporate or should incorporate the student voice. So that'll be one work group that we ask members of the advisory board to consider participating on. The second recommendation was to develop guidance on the criminal and administrative investigation in response to social media threats. One of the things we've added to this particular recommendation is expanding it to include the incidence of swatting. So whether it's the development of infographics or somehow explaining the process of how, when these social media threats are identified, how they're investigated and how a resolution is founded, just so that the not just the school safety community, but potentially the general public understands how that process works. And then finally was recommendation 9.1, which is the development of education and guidance on quickly identifying and addressing any inaccurate information that goes out, whether that's inaccurate information being shared over social media or by news media, or throughout this individual schools or school systems. So that recommendation 9.1 is the third work group we're going to ask members of the advisory board to consider participating in. So what does this look like? So immediately after this meeting, you're going to receive a link where you can prioritize, pick your first choice, second choice, third choice of these different work groups. Right now, assuming that the advisory board is comfortable with this, the plan is to have the work groups meet the first hour of each advisory board meeting to dig into the discussion, dig into the particular recommendation and identify potential outcomes, and then bring, when the entire advisory board comes back together as a group, that one individual from each of those work groups will brief out the board on progress on that particular recommendation. So I will open it up to any questions that anybody has on either the three recommendations that the advisory board is being asked to begin with, or the process that will happen once this meeting concludes. So we'll send out a link. You'll be able to prioritize your first, second, and third choice of those three recommendations. And then the center staff will put together the work groups for you, notify the advisory board members which work group they're on. And we're happy to have sort of individual conversations if there's a particular recommendation work group that you really want to be on.
Any questions? Ms. Bryan, are you finished?
Yes. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, are you finished?
following the meeting, the link will go out, and then we will let everybody know which work group they're on.
Okay, thank you very much for this overview, and that link will be sent after this meeting as stated. And that brings us to our next item. First of all, I want to start by saying thank you to Kate Bryan and the whole MCSS staff for your organization of today's meeting and the work of which you do every day on behalf of our young people in the state of Maryland. Our next meeting is December the 5th, 2022. I'm going to continue these virtual for a while based upon the efficiencies of attendance and then with an eye to the future regarding illness. And I hope that this works for you. Our hope is maybe in the spring that we can maybe meet together in person. But for now, we're going to maintain these meetings in a virtual setting. And at this moment, this brings us to the adjournment of our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Laurel.
Yeah, I have a motion to adjourn from Laurel. Do I have a second?
This is Tom. I'll second that.
Thank you for the second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition to closing the meeting? Hearing none, I wish all of you a wonderful, safe, and Thanksgiving. And we will see you in the very near future. And feel free to reach out to me at any time. This is an extremely important group, and I'm honored to be a part of working with so many leaders within our state. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.